into the show because I'm not Sunny Danforth. I'm Kevin Hoare. It is the 1st of November, All Saints Day, and the Saints go marching in. They march in here on the captive audience too. And with us, along with those Saints, is a fabulous gentleman that I don't get to do the show with very much, Don Anderson. Don, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic. It's Wonderful Wednesday, as Sonny likes to call it, even though Sonny's not here. So you're here, Kevin. Well, fun.
Well, Sunny's shining on us anyway. With her with the thoughts that she likes to share of Wonderful Wednesday. We're going to make it wonderful, or at least informative for everyone today. And leading off our show tonight is an exchange that took place between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. It's on the Joe Rogan show. It was the Halloween show they did yesterday. Yeah, Joe Rogan, I don't know, I think he's like 10, 12, 15, 20 million listeners, viewers, or whatever for his podcast. And he and Elon Musk were talking about, like, is there any place that's more far left than San Francisco and Berkeley? Because of course San Francisco, we know, is a mess. And Berkeley is where University of California at Berkeley is located, and it's known for being like the far left crazy campus, right? And it's a very niche community. And Rogan responded, maybe Portland. And Elon Musk said, maybe Portland. Maybe more far left than what typically is seen as the most far left place. It comes at a time that Mayor Wheeler is trying to spend millions of tax dollars to fix what he calls reputation damage the city of Portland has. And you can go watch the clip yourself if you want online, because it's their exchange and the banter that takes place around this. But I just think it's fascinating. Reputation damage. You know, it's like, it's one thing when somebody does it to you. When you do it to yourself and then you say, you know what, we got to fix our reputation damage. It starts with realizing that you did it to yourself. And then you go from there. And I think, didn't you say that you heard that Portland's actually getting ready to ban outdoor camping? Was that the latest that you heard? I had not seen the report, but
a couple of days ago, they announced they're going to ban outdoor camping. They've also talked about increasing the police. I mean, these were things that they put into place to reduce the number of police, stop enforcing crime. You got a DA who it's just a revolving door, catch and release. And then you're shocked that crime gets out of control. These are the reasons why Portland's out Berkeley. And it's just interesting to see people on the national stage pretty much say that. When you talk to people across the country, and you're almost embarrassed to say you live in or near Portland. Anymore. And that was never, it used to be a point of pride where people, as soon as you mentioned you lived near Portland, everyone wanted to know how wonderful it was, and they heard how great it was and how beautiful it was. Now all you get is a bunch of questions about how atrocious it is. This all happened in what 8 years? They managed to destroy the place?
Yeah, they did it expeditiously. By the way, and this is really going to drive them nuts, because don't forget, one of the reasons why Portland's so far left isn't only because they've decided to try some of the stupidest policies first and take them as far as they can go until they finally realize that they're committing suicide or reputation damage, as it is, something as ephemeral as reputation damage, when you know it's far worse than that. People are concerned about getting shot, concerned about people stealing their cars, and the city is concerned about reputation damage. Yeah, maybe they should care about actual damage. But what was interesting is this will drive them ballistic. It's so bad that, and not just in Portland, but other people have decided to emulate the policies here, that they've inspired President Trump to start commenting on what to do about homelessness and mental illness in the country. And he just said, look, here's what you're going to do. And, you know, when he says something, we know this from the past, when he says something, he actually means it. Like, he'll get in there, and on day one, there will be an executive order ready for him to sign, and people appointed to different positions in the government who will do this, because he said, I'm going to do this, which is said, I'm going to use absolutely every means to get everybody off the street. And the mentally ill, we're going to get them back into institutions where they can be cared for. Because where are they being? Where are our mental institutions now?
Yeah.
They're the streets,
They're
right?
sleeping under bridges in Portland.
I don't remember. I know that there's been problems if you go back to the 50s and 60s, abuses and lack of oversight for what was going on. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was filmed in Salem, right? That was about the Oregon State Hospital. But I don't remember anybody saying then or now that it would be far better if we simply turned everybody out onto the streets who's in the mental institutions, give them tents, give them straws and foil and crack pipes and a cheap supply of severe narcotics, and say, see, that's a lot better. You're going to recover so fast, and you're going to get the kind of care you need by living on the streets amongst criminals doing hard drugs.
By every objective measure, the leadership in Portland has driven this problem. So one of the things you do is when you lower the bar, when you don't enforce the law, when you tell the rest of the country you're not going to have enough cops in the streets, when you do those kinds of things, what you do is not only do you increase the boldness of the criminals that already live in your city, you attract criminals from other cities. And that's precisely what's happened here. People move here knowing for the express purpose of committing crime. The regular citizen in Portland, I don't think they've really changed that much. But what we've done is we've attracted the worst from the rest of the country.
We're a crime magnet. We're a drug addicted, homeless, rampant crime and homicide magnet. And they're finally starting to describe all of the stuff I just said as reputation damage. If you become a magnet for criminals from across these other 49 states, and who knows, maybe beyond, and then after a couple of years of it going to hell in a handbasket, and you're like, I think this has hurt our reputation. I think your reputation has been very successful. Of what you were trying to do is get every drug addicted criminal in the country to come here. It's working great.
And this is the thing, Kevin. The reality is, why do they care now? I'll tell you why they care now. We're 12 months away from an election.
Yes.
So suddenly, if you drive into Portland, things look sparkly and cleaned up. Now, you can't cover up the fact that there's nobody shopping down there anymore because you've run all the businesses out of the place. But all of a sudden, it looks safe, at least during the daytime, to walk around. But, Target's gone. You go on the list of these companies that are just gone.
It's really, they don't have to worry about wearing out the sidewalks anymore. And there's probably more parking spaces than ever, because if enough stores leave, there's nobody there. But there's space for more tents, and there will be more tents at some point, most likely, because they can't help it.
Yeah, how long will it take to turn that around? I mean, businesses aren't doing it just because you decide to change your policy. We're going to go back and invest in Portland. That's what just did to us for the last 8 years. It's going to take a long time for that to come back. And you got leases that have yet to expire. So a lot of those office buildings down, they're being paid for, but nobody's in them. And when those leases expire, nobody's going to redo those leases. Or if they do, it's going to be some ridiculously reduced price. The harm that is done to the long-term economy down there is multi-generational, I think.
Well, let's say what you wanted to do was attract families with children. One of the things I wouldn't do if I were trying to attract families with children who want to live in a state that has all the things that families really appreciate, like safe streets, economic opportunity for the parents, and schools that are successful that actually educate kids. Here's one thing I wouldn't do if you're talking about reputation damage. I wouldn't do what Oregon has decided to do. And by the way, I know we were laying it on Portland, but when it comes to the attracting homeless people from all over the country, actually that's on Oregon and on the legislature in particular, right? So as well as the governor. So everybody, but this one is squarely in the corner of Governor Kotek and the Oregon Board of Education. They decided unanimously. So apparently there are no dissenting voices anymore on the Politburo of Education in Salem. They voted unanimously to remove requirements for students to be proficient in reading and writing in order to graduate. They've removed it. And so, if you're like a family, like, should we go to Oregon? Well, you know what? Apparently the education system's so bad and in such a state of failure that people you cannot be certain they'll read and write when they graduate, and they don't have to.
Yeah.
Not moving there.
Yeah, you don't even want to measure it. It's so bad. And here's the other side to that. There's been a tremendous drop off in student enrollment since COVID. It's like a huge. This is true nationally, but in places like Oregon, you do something like that. People who are looking at that is like, well, I got to pull my kid out of that place. We all know the money follows the kid. Eventually, that system's going to bankrupt itself, which is probably a good thing. And they'll come crying and whining to the taxpayers for more money.
Well, and the thing is, they'll say we need more money and more time so we can have less students and fail more. That's the thing. It's like it's a death spiral of stupidity and foolishness. And here's what the Oregon Department of Education released in a statement calling the reading and writing proficiency standards in Oregon, quote, burdensome to teachers and students, unquote. We wouldn't want teachers and students to be burdened with reading and writing. That would really get in the way of whatever the education system is there for. And so Dan Farley, Oregon's assistant superintendent of research, assessment, and data, I wonder if he can read and write. Wouldn't need to say dumb stuff like this. He said the standards simply, quote, did not work, unquote. And by the way, these are standards they lowered. So they started at a level that was supposed to guarantee a reading and writing proficiency comparable with what you can get in the rest of the country, not comparable with the rest of the world. We're way behind the other developed industrial countries. No, just at a minimum standard for the rest of the country. They lowered those standards once they started getting free passes from the federal government and money, even if they failed, from the Department of Education at the federal level. And now they're saying the standards didn't work, so we're getting rid of them. It doesn't seem to talk about how they don't work as educators, that they are a failure. And so they said Ohio tried the same strategy in 2020, apparently, and the results are already looking grim. Then state superintendent, so former state superintendent Paolo Di Maria, reformed. See, this is reform. When you get rid of things, it's reform. Graduation requirements, abandoning competency in math and English. Since that decision, Ohio's math proficiency has dropped. They're measuring it. They just don't care anymore. And Ohio State University did a report on Ohio's proficiency in math and English and described middle and high school grades math performance decline as, quote, substantial, unquote. Since 2020, math performance in grades 3 through 10 has fallen between 1% and 4%, and so shows no sign of improving.
Now, can you imagine? Let's just use a sports analogy. Can you imagine your football team and you're losing? And the coach responds by saying, let's make practices shorter. Let's not measure your ability to tackle. Let's not measure how many yards per carry. Let's not measure how many interceptions or fumbles or any of that. And let's see if that improves the game. You would never, ever do that. But we tolerate this with these government officials. It's absolutely insane on the face of it.
And they'd be like, and we have no idea why we're not winning the game or scoring points. But you know what? We're going to say that the failure is because we were keeping score. That's why we're failing at the game. If we just didn't keep score, we would succeed at the game. In fact, we'd all be winners. And
but Kevin, you have to change what you got to realize what the game is. The purpose of the public educational system is not to educate kids. That's what they tell you. Look at what it's successful at. It's very successful at daycare. It's very successful at creating criminals. It's very successful at creating people who can't read and write so they become welfare recipients. And it's very successful at creating Democrat voters who vote for government handouts. So it's really successful if you look at what their goal. You can't look at their stated objective. You got to look at what their true objective is. That's the left.
Don, you're just being racist. One of our friends here, Lori Shaw, says, "Wait for it, it's racist." So you're just being this out of control racist, and everybody they can just look at you and see you're racist. See? I'm looking, I can see it, and so And we are also going to chase other states to the bottom. Apparently, Baltimore City Public Schools in Maryland, which relaxed math standards several times since the 2010s, I guess they haven't gotten rid of them yet. They just have relaxed them. Currently has 13 high schools in which zero students, tested proficient in math.
Zero.
In 2023, zero. And so we are racing to the bottom. We can't let these other blue states outfail us. We have to beat them at failure.
It's like Blue Tarsky from Animal House. 0.0.
0.0 grade point average. Yeah, all the kids will be qualified to do is smash beer cans against their forehead, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and go on panty raids or something, whatever the other stuff they did in Animal. That's all they'll be qualified to do, because reading and but you know what? When the reports get published saying that the kids can't read and write, they won't know it because they can't read and write.
But here's the sad human side of this. I mean, you have to laugh in order to in order to get through this. But imagine yourself being a kid, you turn 18 or 19, and you realize you can't do anything that can put a dollar in your pocket. I mean, you literally can't do anything. You can't even, due to the minimum wage laws, employers can't even hire you for what you're worth because they don't have the money to put into you, train you. So you are unemployable. What do you wind up doing? What will pay you a decent wage where you could actually work? Well, crime,
you join the booming fentanyl industry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or if you actually do manage to hold down a barista job, then you can riot with Antifa, because it doesn't cost anything. I mean, George Soros has already got you covered in terms of making sure that you can get your black bloc and your baton and your pepper spray and your concrete milkshake, and you can go out and just attack police officers and light buildings on fire because you're just peacefully protesting. No qualifications needed for that.
Yeah. Plus, if I can make $5 a pop dealing some drugs or selling my body or whatever it is, that's a logical choice delivered to us via our public school system.
I guess so. Someone was going to try to make prostitution legal in the state of Oregon, and it occurred to me just now that actually they were just innocently proposing a jobs program for our illiterate children who apparently are not qualified to do any of the jobs that you just talked about. And this is in an economy where they've actually had a hard time finding people. Well, I think the correction is they've had a hard time finding people that can read and write.
Well, that's why the Democratic officials of the party calls them sex workers. They won't call them prostitutes because they're trying to create it into a profession by giving it a title that sounds professional. So they're sex workers.
Who needs reading and writing? You know, your pimp can take care of that for you.
Absolutely.
You know? I know, it's like, I wish we were just making this stuff up, but we're really just citing things that have actually been attempted or have actually happened in the state of Oregon. Well, let's take it. Let's take next some of the congressional story stuff here in Oregon, and then we'll transition into the energy stuff, which follows right to that, and then we'll talk a little bit about our concerns about the border here that have come up. So, big story out of the 4th district. A blogger has done the legwork that apparently a lot of the media won't do. He's found out that Val Hoyle, who's the current sitting 4th congressional district, a Democrat member of Congress, who's mired in a scandal involving LaModa. LaModa is a company. It's a marijuana company that was sending bags of cash to Democrats, and also had hired former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan, and that's part of the reason why she's the former Secretary of State, is that it turned out that she had violated ethics and perhaps laws. There's some federal investigations about money moving across state lines to pay for this, and she resigned. Well, this same entity was also sending money and working out deals, donating to Val Hoyle in order to get lucrative internships, apprenticeships awarded to an entity started by LaMotta. They donated, I forget what it was like $50,000 or something like that, and the return on investment was tenfold. They got a $554,000 apprenticeship awarded to them, to a nonprofit that they had set up just 2 weeks earlier. And I can tell you one thing about nonprofits: I don't know any Republicans or conservatives that can set up a nonprofit in 2 weeks and be ready to get a $554,000 grant from the government. But Val Hoyle made it happen, and so she spent 8 months being pursued by her former agency that she was in charge of. She was elected to be the commissioner for the Bureau of Labor and Industry a few years back, and before she went and ran for Congress. Well, she spent 8 months pretending like she had no idea that she'd done all this public business on her private cell phone, and then refusing to turn it over to the government. It's our property. We have a right to it because this stuff was actually done in our name and we paid for it. But Val apparently doesn't think she has to turn it over. Well, turns out that that there is an employee of LaMotta who donated $1,000 campaign contribution to Val so that she could get elected to Congress. And even though Val said she had returned or donated to charity all of these other funds that were illicitly donated to her, apparently she's kept this one. Because the person that donated it, her name is, let me see if I can find it here. It is Laura Vega. She's a former LaMotta employee and recipient, and she is the recipient of the Unlawful Cannabis Apprenticeship Grant. You can't make this stuff up because it's all public info, and yet the media, which hasn't gotten around to finding it, and there has been some good reporting by Sophie Peel at the Willamette Week, but they found out that this donation is still there. And of course, who couldn't afford $1,000 donation after this apprenticeship agreed to pay Vega $97,000 to create this cannabis apprenticeship program? Yeah, I guess you could kick back $1,000 pretty easily. But Hoyle apparently just has no idea how corrupt her own donors are and how corrupt she's become as a result. She just has no idea. She is very concerned that she's managed to avert the UAW strike in Detroit, Michigan, because that's what Oregonians in the 4th District really care about. And it's apparently the agreement in this strike is going to lead to more expensive vehicles. Last time I checked, people in the 4th District, no car plants, but they do like to purchase vehicles at an affordable price. So good job, Val. What do you think of that? Is she just? She just does what I have no idea what they're doing.
Well, some of these people go into in the public service sector, it's because they got the terminology messed up. They're in the self-service sector.
Self-service, yeah. They don't want to ban self-service because that's what they're doing at the trough, right? They're feeding off the public dole effectively by procuring funds for donors and other people that they favor, and in turn getting campaign contributions left and right for it. So you're right. They're engaged in self-service.
Pretty much.
Well, speaking of that, there's another development in the congressional delegation situation for Oregon. So we talked yesterday, David and I, about Bowtie Earl Blumenauer from the 3rd Congressional District. That represents Portland and has for I think almost 3 decades.
Right.
And he's decided he's going to retire. He's done trying to destroy the country and vote for socialism.
Having done a great job, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. However, there's always like a line of Democrats ready to jump in on this. And so someone by the name of Sushila Jayapal
Mhm.
She's a county commissioner in Multnomah County, and she says she's resigning today to run for the 3rd congressional district.
Mhm.
She's apparently designated her successor for the commission. I don't know how she gets to do that. Last time I checked, people were supposed to be elected to these things, but anyway. Um, and so Nigel Jaquist covered this story for Willamette Week and said that Shushila Jayapal is going to file to run for it. She probably is the odds-on favorite. And what's fascinating is she's got a sister in
Mhm.
Washington State, also with the last name Jayapal. And that Jayapal is one of the 4 squad members in the United States Congress, along with AOC and uh, Tlaib and the others, who are all calling apparently for ceasefires or calling blaming Israel for bombing hospitals that Hamas, bombed on their own. and and so Jayapal, she's also somebody who resisted lighting up one of the bridges in Portland as a sign of solidarity with Israel. She
Mhm.
insisted that we light up the bridge also, um, in solidarity with Hamas.
Mhm.
So she's a real gem,
Yeah.
and she's going to run for Congress. I guess some people are going to think back to the good old days when we had somebody only as idiotic as Earl Blumenauer.
Apparently. Well, with any luck, maybe people are waking up in Portland. Who knows? Um,
I don't know that that'll change the outcome of that particular race, but yeah,
mhm.
at some point you got to wake up or you're going to find yourself in just a mess. Well,
Yeah.
here's something. So Jayapal, transitioning away from the congressional news, is calling for, this is just yesterday, she's demanding that Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan ban leaded gasoline at the Portland International Raceway, because she's saying that this is destroying the city's air quality uh, at a raceway. Um,
Now you got to think to yourself, first of all the competing issues, even if that was a legitimate issue, of all the competing issues in Portland, you're going to spend your energy on that. It's incredible. These people. Um,
well, and there's a reason why they use leaded gasoline. It is a far more efficient form of gasoline for race cars,
mhm,
which we don't, race cars are not top polluters.
mhm,
Sorry, they don't. They race, and then they don't race all the time.
mhm,
They actually did, Ryan, in an October 2nd letter, um, to Ryan, Jayapal wrote that recent testing, which found that lead levels at the track weren't high enough to present immediate health risks, had substantial limitations. They're studying whether or not race cars are like dangerous to the city. It doesn't sound like they want a racetrack to be there. I think that's probably, and that would fit with all the other businesses they want to chase out of the city for one reason or another. But
mhm.
think of all the problems in Portland and Multnomah County, and this is what she's focused on.
Yeah, that's par for the course.
Well, she's not the only one focusing on dumb ideas. The city of Eugene, never to be topped by Portland if they can manage it. By the way, Eugene was where Animal House was filmed at the University of Oregon.
Appropriately.
Um, and it was a fictional college, but it was actually University of Oregon. So, speaking of smashing beer cans against your head, we've got the city of Eugene wants to make it so that you cannot have new gas stations in the city, because they think this is a great way to curb the use of fossil fuels, is have people run out of gas or be unable to find an affordable gas station. And they don't care, I guess. And they've got these activists, the same idiots that went and tried to ban natural gas
Mhm.
during the past year, and then they got their butts kicked and had to repeal the ordinance after the city, there was an uprising amongst actual residents of the city, not college students trying to get college credit for reading testimony off their cell phones that was prepared for them in class, all wearing the same color astroturf red shirt protesting for climate justice. No, it was actually business owners, restaurant owners,
Mhm.
regular residents who just like heating their food with natural gas, heating their homes with natural gas, heating their water with natural gas, and so Eugene's decided to move on to the next dumb idea.
It's the literal hatred of the lower and middle class that
That's what
comes
it
out of the mouths because this is who it's going to hurt. They can't afford to go out and buy a $60,000 Tesla or whatever it is that you buy. That's an electric vehicle, or whatever. Those are the people that are going to be hurt by this. The person has to drive a used car who's trying to get to work to pay the bills in their second job. They got to
Yep.
drive all the way to Springfield now, to get gas. This was the same city that did the same thing with what? They tried to do a ban on what? Natural gas in new buildings. I think that was last year. These
Yep,
same
that was
climate
last year, and then it got repealed this year because
right.
apparently they were going to refer it to the ballot, and they must have done a
Mhm.
poll and found out they were just going to get trounced by
Yeah.
70% of the city was against them.
Yeah.
Eugene.
It's like insane. What can you say? And what's happening in that town, I think this is my gut, is people who got common sense are moving to Springfield. In fact, they have a hospital. The whole town only has one hospital, and that hospital is closing. So if you want to go to the hospital in Eugene, you got to go to like Springfield. Uh,
That's right.
it,
Yeah, no, they're in a world of hurt. They got real problems, and they're doing this instead, which will actually make absolutely no difference in the globe's temperature.
no.
Zero. So it's a bunch of virtue signaling that's going to hurt working class people. And the University of Oregon college student climate activists getting extra credit from their wacko professors, they don't have to drive anywhere. They just walk around. They're living in a socialist utopia already where everything is there and presented for them, and they don't have to drive anywhere.
Yeah.
It's I think this is going to be another one. They're going to step on a lion mine here. I see every gas station in the city is going to have people in front of it. There's probably going to be a petition to sign to refer the ordinance to the ballot. There's going to be people carrying signs saying, City of Eugene wants you to run out of gas.
And the great thing about this kind of an issue, it's not complicated. It's easy to understand,
Yeah,
right? It's
it's
just
not
like
esoteric.
they can lie about inflation till the cows come home. Everybody drives down the street and sees the price of gas and knows they're lying. Same with your food bill, right?
Yep.
So that's the great thing about so keep doing those kinds of things, please.
Yeah, because being that stupid is good for us. Thank
Yeah.
you. You're right. Exactly. We should thank them. Well, let's shift over to the windmill follies because, as you know, on the southern Oregon coast, they're trying to put up offshore windmill facilities, ones that you could see from the coast that have a lot of issues with harm to wildlife. Not only do the windmills, they're known as bird choppers, like to chop up birds, but rare birds too, like eagles and condors in California and stuff like that. But they also the approach they take to site them and to construct them does things like causes harm to whales. And remember, it used to be that whales were something that people on the left cared about. Well, apparently they don't now because the whales are the big losers in the offshore wind farm. But here's the here's the little news that shows up as soon as you start talking about offshore wind. It requires so much in terms of government subsidies in order to even get set up, much less sustain it, that places like California are shutting off the wind and some of the solar farms because they don't have power lines to carry the electricity because they didn't think of that. Apparently they thought that they could just build us and then power lines would just magically appear. And so that's really good. That's California, and let's not try to be that dumb as California. No, actually, we already are. And then New Jersey, right? Another blue state. They've canceled. There's a firm that's actually canceled all of the New Jersey offshore wind farm projects because they would have to write off. Get this, $5.6 billion wind developers because they can't handle the financing costs. You know what has actually hurt them? It isn't just the fact that it needs government subsidies.
Mhm.
It's that if they go to the private sector and they try to secure a loan to finance this stuff, well,
Yeah.
thanks to Biden inflation and the need to raise
Oh,
interest rates, no
yeah.
one can afford the interest rates now.
Yeah.
So they're going bankrupt.
Yeah. And it's such the ultimate in virtue signaling. I mean, for one thing, those things are only viable when the wind blows. I mean, so they're hugely limited in relative to what we get with the traditional ways of getting energy. It's not even close. It's just not cost effective. The technology isn't there yet. And you think of a place like Oregon, which is always, and I love it when the left comes in conflict with its own views.
Yeah.
What a beautiful coastline, and to want to ruin it by putting these these visual monstrosities off the coast. Not to mention the danger to the wildlife that you just it's just incredible. They've already done this to Eastern Oregon, and it's not pretty. Um, and half the time, those things just sit there, not turning. It's just crazy.
Well, the Brandon administration is planning a big bailout, by the way, of these firms. So, because
Mhm.
apparently they have unlimited funds and they plan to spend unlimited funds that they think they have on bailing out money losing operations
Mhm.
that kill birds and whales. And yeah, there's a real debate going on here because in southern and central Oregon coast, people are livid at these things being put up. They're
Mhm.
really angry, and this is going to be where we're going to find out if the feedback actually reaches uh, the bureaucrats and the Brandon administration who are just going to force this through, while
Mhm.
all these things are just losing money hand over fist everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, what they're doing is they're taking reliable energy and they're replacing it with unreliable energy. So you can expect
Mhm.
everyone to suffer, not just the people within visual sight distance of the windmills or the birds or the whales. It's everybody. You're gonna flip the switch and be like, sorry, we took away the natural gas power plant. We don't allow nuclear. We have gotten rid of we've taken out hydroelectric dams because we don't like water and gravity. We don't think it's renewable. And
Mhm.
so what we're going to do is we replaced it with solar and wind, for which we
Mhm.
don't have enough power lines, and
Mhm.
they don't work when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. So, sorry.
Yeah. So how long does this stuff go on before we start having blackouts? There are some municipalities, we know all around the world, but there are some places, I think probably in the United States too, that are experiencing that already. I think California has. I mean, you can't keep doing this stuff.
No. Well, you're just being racist again, Don.
Yeah, I know. I can't help myself.
Well, and so, um, but so here's the thing: we also have to be concerned that the Brandon administration is creating a real severe problem in the Department of Homeland Security and at the border. Here's two pieces of news. One is that Republicans in Congress are raising the terror alarm after illegal immigrants caught or have been caught with explosive devices as they try to cross the border. I don't remember the Statue of Liberty saying, "Bring us your tired, you're cold, you're hungry, and your teeming masses yearning to be free to blow us up." I don't remember that. That's not on there, is it? And I don't understand why someone who really needs to come and find a better life in the United States needs to bring homemade explosive devices into the country.
Well,
That's what
it'd be
Senator
helpful.
Joe Brasso just said, and they said the Border Patrol agents are telling them that this is happening. They're just not hearing it from the Secretary of Homeland Security for some reason.
Well, it'd be helpful, Kevin, if they were legal immigrants. That's the one thing. I saw an article not that long ago. Was it Texas has been putting up trying to defend its own border since the federal government wouldn't do it, and they were putting up barbed wire, and then the federal agents are coming in and cutting it back down. So this is recently I think it was a Supreme Court ruling that said they can't do that anymore. So at least Texas can defend its portion of the border.
Yeah, that's good news.
But the scary thing about this, when you get down to it, is this country is pretty much going to be impossible to invade because we have two oceans and two friendly countries. The only way this happens is if we let it happen. If you
Yeah.
think about the number of people coming into this country illegally, and it's in the millions now, and they're mostly young men. We're not talking about women with children, right? Mostly young men. And it's not just South America they're coming from anymore either. So when they're coming from places like Mexico, which, from a Judeo-Christian, cultural backgrounds, at least similar to ours, yes, they might get on the welfare system and that sort of thing, but you don't have to worry about them walking into your grocery store and blowing up the grocery store. When you start getting people from non-Judeo-Christian backgrounds coming into the country, and this is already happening in Europe, and it's a lot closer for them, then you walk into a whole lot of Gaza Strip type scenarios, shall I say, right? And we let too many. I mean, hey, look, think to yourself. We know how the Democratic Party loves October surprises. We know they're going to pull something this October. If you wanted to shut down the election because you can't figure out any other way to do it, what better way to do it than to let a bunch of these clowns come into the country and let's just say have an event sometime in early or late October where there's a bunch of, let's say, shootings at a bunch of Walmarts at the same time. How difficult would that be to do?
Yeah.
And then you declare a national emergency and we got to call off the election because they're going to lose it.
They're not going to declare it a national emergency because they're causing it, right?
Yes.
That's one of the fascinating things about it is there's just they wouldn't want to expose the fact that they're the cause of our problems. And by the way, U.S. officials in general are warning of heightened terror alerts amid the Israeli-Hamas war that's going on. So this dumb stuff that they're doing is being done at the dumbest time. That you can't get dumber than that. Do something really dumb, creates risk, do it at the dumbest time.
Unless, of course, it's your purpose in the first place.
Yeah, unless it's your plan. And then, you're doing exactly what you wanted to do, and it's working perfectly.
Which is even scarier. I thought it was interesting. Remember what happened in Canada with the truckers' strike? All of a sudden, these people dropped into Canada, enforcing getting the truckers off the road and people staying in their houses, and they look like UN people. Now, you got to wonder about that, right? I mean, these people are not to be trusted.
Well, and there's going to be a consequence. There always is. It's just I hate it when it's so preventable and predictable, and they still do nothing about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so, well, this is the story to conclude on here is that there was a Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. There was a Senate Homeland Security committee hearing, and the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, who's responsible for all of this, the border security, the internal security, our ports of entry, our airports, it's all under him. And he's one of the top enablers. Well, apparently he hasn't been able to bring himself to denounce and fire a Department of Homeland Security employee who posted pro-genocidal slogans and images on social media calling for the deaths and genocide of Israelis. The person who's supposed to be working in the department that's supposed to keep us safe during high terror threats with a wide open border and explosives coming through, he apparently can't bring himself to take action about somebody who is posting hateful anti-Semitic songs and pro-genocidal slogans. That's who's working there.
Yeah. Well,
to your point about it being the plan, it's somebody's plan.
Yeah. There is an undercurrent of anti-Semitism on the left that's been there a long time. And as terrible as this sounds, it's kind of the one positive that comes out of this is just like with everything else, they've taken off the covers. Now you see exactly who they are. They're anti-Semitic. How else can you describe that? They've just blown up and beheaded women, children, babies, the whole nine.
Yeah.
And you can't bring yourself to denounce that.
Yeah. They've dehumanized people and decided that the victims are the criminals and the criminals and the terrorists are the victims. That sounds like what we've done domestically that's led to the breakdown of our own legal system. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the same administration is doing this internationally with our national security. But Josh Hawley took him to the woodshed, and it's worth watching. because Alejandro Mayorkas should have been impeached like a year or two ago, in my view. Just put him on trial. He's not doing the job that he's sworn to uphold. And he comes up there and repeatedly tells, he literally sits in front of the committee saying, the border is closed. It's secure. Tell that to 11 million people that just wandered across it, including a couple million gotaways and then people they found with explosives and Chinese males of military age that show up in the United States and then start wandering onto U.S. military bases. It's like, come on.
Interestingly, none of the Arab countries that border Israel are taking in any Palestinian immigrants. They won't take any of them in. Maybe they know something.
They've been there, done that, and got the bloody T-shirt for it years ago when the thanks they got for harboring Palestinian refugees was terrorism in their own country and instability. So
we have to learn from that page again.
I know. I can't. I don't know. They're stuck on the Brandon administration is stuck on stupid, and nobody's home at in the cranium of the cadaver in chief. Just no
cadaver. That's pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we better save this country, but we're going to keep delivering to everybody every day that we're on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Opinion and news that you can't get anywhere else here in Oregon, streaming live from the captive audience. Don, thank you for joining me here tonight. I really appreciate it. It was fun. We had a good time, and we delivered some truth, eh?
Absolutely. It's always a great time. I love my Wednesdays, and it's great to do it with you, Kevin. I don't get to do it very often, but it's always fun when we do.
Yes, sir. Well, and we'll be back. Should be back on Friday. I don't know. I think David isn't hosting. Might be Sunny. But we'll be back on Friday with another episode of the Captive Audience, and I'm sure we'll have even more crazy headlines to share with you by then. So have a great night, everyone. Share the show with everyone you can, and we look forward to seeing you